dear, I hope my internet doesn't cut out. But today, I'm going to be talking about an alternate history that I thought about. Doesn't seem particular at the start when you first hear about it, but I'm gonna take it on a wild ride. So Germany has already gotten all of this, and their allies, all of this, all of Hungary and Romania and Slovakia. Well, they puppeted Slovakia and Vichy France, but so now in near 1940, Italy invades Greece through Albania. Greece, I'm going to draw some in here, and Greece fades into southern Albania. So then Germany pressures Yugoslavia and Bulgaria to join their side to let them invade Greece. Bulgaria does join the Axis because they wanted Macedonia for themselves. But Yugoslavia knew that they would partition them. So you're thinking, well, if the Axis was going to partition them, why in the world would they just let the Axis be there? Well, the Chetniks, Yugoslav partisan group, really didn't do anything when the Axis actually invaded Yugoslavia and controlled them. The communists were the ones that actually did all the work. So I'm sitting outside to be not distracted by anything going on in my house. And things are going on in my house right at the door. So it's kind of distracting. Now, where was I? Oh yeah, Yugoslavia joining them. The Chetniks didn't really do anything to stop the Axis. They just wanted to wait for the Allies. So, let's say the Chetniks have more support. The Chetniks are anti-Croat, anti-Muslim, and pro-monarchy. They would probably side with the Axis, knowing that they were too strong, and just like can't think of the word, cooperate with the Axis, but not actually do that well for them. This can help the Axis in some ways, but also end up leading to their downfall when the Allies actually invade. So Bulgaria, which I am going to color in a different color, ends up taking Montenegro and probably taking some of Greece. Greece is puppeted by the Italians. Yugoslavia is puppeted by the Italians. The Italians will probably annex. They're not annexing anything right now. I'm just kind of highlighting their territory, that it wasn't part of their territory. And then I have to repick the color. Meh. Yeah, this is a pain. The Italians probably take the coast. Germany probably doesn't take anything. And Hungary probably takes just a little bit down there. Now that Yugoslavia, which didn't end up actually holding out, doing much resistance against the Germans in our timeline, will now join the Axis and will probably help in the Italian campaign in North Africa, but not very much. Then, when the Allies eventually invade Sicily, they'll slow their advance, but not enough to actually make any meaningful impact. What am I drawing with? Jeez. What? Yeah. Oh my gosh. Let me just... But not enough to make any meaningful impact. Now, the Germans still do Operation Barbarossa. Maybe get a little bit further because the Italian flank isn't as compromised and not as much, even though the invasion of Sicily. But that only comes later in the war, so I don't know why I drew it. I'll draw that back in later. Germans probably get further. They probably hold on to the siege of Leningrad for longer. Maybe it breaks a little, but it's besieged. But I don't believe that but even if they did end up taking Leningrad, their logistics were bad enough that they would just be pushed out, and the civilians especially would probably just push them out again. They would still lose the Battle of Moscow because, again, logistics and winter operations. They might get closer, but they'll still fail. And Stalingrad, they're still going to fail because, there was a river, and also they overstretched their lines and then got encircled, which they still are probably going to do that in this timeline because they're mad. But because the German flanks aren't as bad, aren't getting destroyed as badly, it is working better for them. Now, the Allies land in Normandy, which isn't going to be stopped because the Germans really thought that they were landing there, and the invasion in Normandy was just going to be a diversionary attack. It was not, but they still, and the Yugoslavs army is now just pretending to work for the Italians, but really not doing as well as they could have. But they're also not surrendering. They also will probably not surrender because the Allies still want them behind enemy lines. And, probably because the Allies tell them to. This will probably work, especially since Italy really wasn't that competent. But the Germans are still able to hold on to Italy for longer. But I feel like when they won't even have to capture Rome, because the Allies can just naval invade Yugoslavia, which they probably will, since Yugoslavian armies have told them about how they really don't like the Italians. They'll probably naval invade. The Yugoslavs will rise up. But by now, Soviets have already done the Battle of Kursk and really are pushing hard. Especially since the Allies are being slowed. Germany can put more on their front, but they still have to defend France, so it really isn't helping that much, especially since now the Soviets know that the Germans are stretched with 3 fronts, an Italian front that really isn't doing very well, and a Yugoslavia that, even in our time, Yugoslavia, took up a lot of German troops to keep down the resistance, and now Yugoslavia is kind of in open arm revolting. So the Soviets are probably really able to push. Romania, they're probably going to push south into Romania. Romania is going to switch sides. I'm not going to be coloring the Soviet countries red. They switch sides. They push south into Bulgaria. Bulgaria is probably going to join the Soviets because the Soviets are still doing well because the Yugoslavs really didn't do anything to help the Germans. So they probably did the same, but they're also holding up the Allies more. So the Allies, the Soviets are still doing what they did, but they're not going to get Yugoslavia because Yugoslavia is more allied to the Allies. But they're probably going to get that Bulgarian portion. So they're gonna. Hungary will eventually realize that they need to switch sides. Made this. I had to redo this video, so I made this really weird peace deal before. Soviets and also the Allies are putting pressure on France. And Italy has also risen up by this point after the naval invasion in Yugoslavia. So now German troops are really having to put pressure in Italy instead of having the Italians do their work. But now I feel like, pretty sure, like, with the Hungarians in arms, the Romanians in arms against them, and the Yugoslavians in arms against them, they're probably going to say, well, the Yugoslavs, since it's like mountains all the way around them, if they can blitzkrieg, do another blitzkrieg into Yugoslavia and recapture Yugoslavia, because Poland isn't going to help them. They've committed too many atrocities there. So they try and blitz into Yugoslavia. Soviets, Soviet Hungary probably isn't that big yet. They're probably more like that. They push into Yugoslavia. Then the Soviets, with the Allies, cut them off. And it's like the Battle of the Bulge, but over in Yugoslavia. And I feel like they would still try to do the Battle of the Bulge, like in our timeline. This won't work. Still going to die. They're probably going to do some. I feel like though, maybe instead of a Battle of the Bulge in the West, they might do. But then again, I feel like they might, with the offensive in the South, like trying to distract them. They might also try to do an offensive there. Maybe offensive to recapture, like encircle Berlin. But they would probably just be pushed back anyway. Both these borders, I will propose to you a peace deal that is quite literally probably insane. But here we go anyway. Allied Yugoslavia, and then Allied Albania, and Allied Italy, because they revolted, and Allied France, with Alsace-Lorraine, and the Allied Germany, which will control Berlin. Because the Soviets they took Berlin, but then they got encircled at it, and it's just, they more took control elsewhere. Then there can be, and the Soviets in our timeline did a lot of deportation. This is why I'm making the borders like this, because they just look better, okay? And also they can probably just deport the Czechs, like over here, like east. Make a Polish puppet. Like there, maybe. And then they'll probably make a Slovakian puppet down there. The Hungarians can get that. The Romanians get that. Well, however you like that. I'm done making the video about what if Yugoslavia decide that they wanted to be in the Axis. Okay, bye.